We have Peter Kang from Barrel Agency who's going to come up, and Peter's going to talk about leveling up leadership through learning. We touched on this at dinner last night a little bit with Peter and Darren and others. This is a fascinating subject I think everyone needs to spend more time thinking about. So I'll hand it over to Peter here.
Thank you, Scott. Awesome. All right, one more talk before lunch, so I'll make this really fast. I think I'm okay. I'll keep it like this. All right, so leveling up leadership through learning. A quick intro, Peter Kang, co-founder, CEO of Barrel. We're a Shopify web agency. I live in the Hudson Valley, a couple hours north of New York City. Father of 3 young boys, ages 5, 3, and 7. What does it mean to level up your leadership? I think the thing that came to mind for me was, really it's about growth and development. Because if you're able to instill growth and development in your leaders, that can lead to positive interactions with clients and the team. Another word that I'll use interchangeably with growth and development is learning. So with that, a quote from one of my favorite books, The Fifth Discipline. Organizations learn only through individuals who learn. Individual learning does not guarantee organizational learning, but without it, no organizational learning occurs. So what does growth and development look like in a leader? Well, try to break it down, and it's really about enhancing these kinds of skills or categories, collaboration, communication. You want them to be better critical thinkers, better problem solvers. You want them to bring better ideas to the table. Storytelling, presentation skills are huge, as well as their ability to manage time and process information. Of course, there's other qualities and attributes, but these are just some of the things that you really want to get out of growth, development, learning. And one thing to keep in mind is that growth and development is an ongoing process. I think about it kind of like yoga. There's no destination or a level where you've solved it. It's just an ongoing process and something you have to continue. And one thing I found to be the most beneficial for learning is through reading books. So how many of you like reading books? Just by show of hands. Okay, great. So, and one thing I want to talk about today in particular is reading books together with your leadership team. So we started actually one step back. Yep. Skip the slide. Okay. Well, one thing that we started doing was our leadership book club. We started it in 2017. We read almost 40 books together as a leadership team, so the Barrel partners, 4 of us. And it's been mostly a mix of books about business concepts, as well as like a lot of memoirs and biographies. It's funny how 40 books, it seems like a lot, but we've been very disciplined in going through this. And so we meet every quarter to discuss our readings, and we will block out basically half a day to come together. And before we meet, I asked the team to come prepared with a few things. So number one, just jot down thoughts on the past quarter. Some of the things that challenges, wins, just ways in which we thought we each grew as a leader, because this kind of sets the tone for what we're going to talk about when we go into the books. And then everyone comes prepared, having read the books, with notes. So they have lessons, highlights, just kind of concepts that they thought were very interesting. So everyone's kind of written that down. We bring that together. And then lastly, I try to come up with an exercise where you can take any of the concepts or lessons from the book and then apply it directly to the business. And I'll go into some examples to show you. So this is from last quarter. We read 2 books. The first one was Turning the Flywheel by Jim Collins, author of Good to Great. So this is like a really slim monograph that was an addendum to that book. And then the other book was Who Not How by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, another really impactful book that we read for this quarter. And then in the middle, you can see here, we got together and we pull out themes. Those yellow cards are where we would have the kind of a theme or a concept that we thought was interesting. And then the blue cards underneath are any of the notes that we took or highlights from the book that we thought were worth saving. And so we do this for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes for each book. And by the end of it, we have this nice little kind of artifact that we're able to be like, all right, cool. Like, these are the things that we agreed were important from the book. And then this last piece, it's an exercise I asked everyone to do. Having read the Flywheel book, I was like, hey, how about we create a flywheel diagram for different aspects of our business? So everyone came prepared with about 3-4 flywheel diagrams. And then this is a great way to see if we fully understood the concept. We critiqued each other's flywheels, and then with that, we were like, oh, this is a much better understanding of what a flywheel is. So a few personal favorites of mine. And actually, I think the slide's a little out of order. Oh, there we go. Okay, just one more example. This is from a couple quarters ago. Madison Avenue Makeover. Anybody read this book? It's about Huge, the digital agency and the transformation they underwent. Really cool book. Highly recommend it. And then this other book, The Inner Game of Tennis, which it's about tennis, but also it's about overcoming anxiety and self-doubt to achieve peak performance. It's a really great book, just applicable to so many aspects of life. And so, in the middle, we did our typical notes and concept sharing. And then the exercise that we did was, inspired by a consulting company worked with Huge to develop a new business model for them. Just kind of in the era of traditional advertising agencies failing, they were asked to imagine, hey, what if we looked at our services more like products? What would that look like? And so it was a great framework that was shared in that book. And so for Barrel, we thought, oh, why don't we just try to do the same? And I asked all the partners to come prepared with their version of what that product roadmap might look like. Okay, so some personal favorites of books that we read in the past. The first one, I love this book because it's an out-of-print book. And I heard it mentioned on Twitter by someone, and I was like, all right, let me try to get a copy. So I had to go through like 4 different independent booksellers to get used copies of these books. But Les Schwab, Pride and Performance, it's about a guy who started a tire shop in the Pacific Northwest and it became a really big chain. Awesome book, highly recommend it. Getting Things Done. Anybody read this one? Super. I love this book. I wish I had read it when I was much younger, but it's been a great unlock for kind of organizing life, tasks, and just having an organized inbox. Becoming Trader Joe. If you shop there, this is an awesome book into just all the quirky decisions and kind of the strategies that went into making Trader Joe what it is today. Leadership and Self-Deception. This is an eye-opening book. It's all about gaining self-awareness as a leader, as a person, and just a lot of times, a lot of the problems that we have in life are just of our own making, and so it's about kind of developing that awareness. And then lastly, the Lessons from the Titans. This is like one of my favorite books that I've read recently. It goes into companies like GE, Boeing, Cat, like all those companies, and really shares a lot of the concepts of why some of these businesses struggled, why some of these businesses succeeded. And you would think, talking about or learning about these big enterprise businesses, how could I relate as a small agency? But there were topics and themes that were really applicable to how we run Barrel. All right. So I want to talk about the benefits of reading together. The first one is this greater retention of content. So it doesn't really matter how many books you read. What matters is what do you retain and what do you get out of it. And I think the activity of note-taking, doing the apply thinking exercises, and then coming together to discuss it with your team, it makes all the content lodge in your brain a lot longer, and it just becomes more useful as a result. The other piece, and I think this is the great benefit of it, is the compounding knowledge. And really, every book that you read, you can think of as a foundation for making the next book that much better, because you have some concepts that you might have absorbed, which then makes the next book make a lot more sense. And then you do this over and over again, and over time you start to see patterns that really make books much more enriching than they might otherwise be in isolation. So let me see. So here's a example where these books all touch upon the concept of creating a vision. And at first I was like, oh, this is like a recurring theme. And then over time you're like, oh wait, they all kind of talk about it slightly differently. And then you realize, oh wow, this is really cool. Like I get why this is an important concept across all these books. So that's an example of where knowledge can really compound. The other one is this idea of shared language among leadership. when you're reading the same books together at the same time, there's something special that happens. It's almost like a shortcut with your leadership team, because you hear somebody talking about XYZ thing, and you're like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, and you don't have to explain to each other, and it just makes communication that much easier. Here's an example. The language of like ownership mentality, accountability, and taking personal responsibility. Like, we were reading these books, and the themes would be so strong in these, and then we would talk about maybe a situation with an employee, or like some kind of situation where we made a mistake, and just having that language of like, oh, you know what, I need to take ownership of that, or I need to be responsible for that, and we knew exactly where they were coming from. Let me make sure this is the right order. Okay, practical tips and advice to do our jobs better. And a lot of times we read because we want to get material, resources, content that will help us in our work. And there are definitely books. I think books do a great job, the right books, of going deeper than any social media content can. So, these are some of the books. I recommend them a lot. Actually, speaking of social media, I do post a lot about these books just to get people kind of aware of how helpful they are. Managing the professional service firm, like this classic. Who's read it, by the way? Anybody here? It is awesome. Like, I would say I probably reference this book, a few times a year. Great stuff on like, how you should be thinking about talent, how you should think about client engagements, how you should think about your business model, and it's so applicable to agency business. The referral code, another really helpful book on just like how to ask people in a specific way so that they be more inclined to give you referrals. Extreme Revenue Growth is another good book about sales engines and growth engines. And then the E-Myth CFO, another very tactical book about finance and kind of thinking about your business from that lens. All right, so you want to start a book club? Here are some tips. First, actually this is all out of order. First, ramp up slowly. We didn't start with 2 books a quarter. We actually started with some articles, and then we did some chapters from books. So we ramped up. This is an example. We read a Harvard Business Review article by Michael Porter called "What is Strategy?" And then this was the first time we kind of started applying some of the lessons. He has this like activity map he draws to kind of help think through a business model and a unique strategy. And so we did that ourselves, and it was really cool, and it just kind of got us in the habit of like, all right, we can read and then we can apply. The other part, I mentioned it earlier, like create artifacts. I mean, in the beginning you're like, all right, like is this really necessary? But over time, when you do it for almost 40 books, it's really cool to look back and be like, wow, look at all the notes we took, look at the themes. Remember that book that we read? What was that concept that was there? And then you can just kind of reference back and look at it real quickly. The other part is it's really important to pick books that are fun to read. So I take the responsibility with my group to kind of curate the books, and I try to, I probably go through about like, a dozen or so books to find a couple that I think we should read. And really, I try to look for books that first are just fun and easy. Like, it's got to hook you from the beginning. It's got to be a page turner, and then I think it's important because I want everyone to just kind of enjoy it and make sure it doesn't feel like a chore. Of course. What you find though is as you read more and more books, you just build a muscle to read more complex books, and so in some ways you kind of your ability to get through more books goes up as you read more. And lastly, this only works if you have 100% buy-in. I'm very lucky. My partners have been super game. For some of them, these are the only books they read the whole year, but nonetheless, they've been really good sports about it. They come super prepared to talk about the books that we've read, and then they are super committed in like getting the most out of it. So, with that, that's my talk.